Good morning to all of you. It's nice to see so many of officers in uniform. They have come all the way from Jinjan to attend this panel discussion. Thank you so much. And I'm also happy to see a lot of young boys and girls present here. Last 4 days, today is the last day, we had a lot of discussion, basically on poetry, books, poems. But today our discussion is a little different. We'll be discussing on leadership and personality of the armed forces. So without wasting any time, I will start my discussion. I will start with Mr. Sri Kumar Nair. You know, his profile is very, very strong. He is graduate from IIT Delhi, IIM Ahmedabad, IIM Bangalore. He has been the corporate world. He is the CEO, Vice President, President, and more than 18 years he's been outside India, working in the development sectors in Africa and other countries. And more interestingly, he is into writing of the armed forces, basically of Air Force. Now, beside that, he is a Fauji son. His father retired as the Air Force person. He is married to an Air Force family. And he has all 3 books, mostly first 2 books are on Air Force and third books is in December in Dhaka. But I would like to say you have covered more of Air Force than of Army in 1971. A little bit of partiality I could make out Air Force. Guilty. Now my question to you is, you have seen both sides. You have been a CEO, as Vice President. So you have handled a lot of corporate work. And at the same time, you have seen your family. And in 1971 war, you were a young boy of class 7 or 8. You have seen the 71 war from when your father was operating. He was involved in the operation. So what is the major difference if we see leadership in the armed forces and leadership in the corporate world?
Thank you, sir. It's an interesting question and one that I feel from time to time. I think very clearly the difference is down to the tasking and roles of the armed forces and of large corporate organizations. Leadership in the armed forces is very structured. It's based on a defined hierarchy, and there's an expectation of instant compliance with instructions. And I think in the corporate world, there is a little more. There is less, at least in the most successful and modern corporate organizations. There is a hierarchy. There is a chain of command, so to speak. But there's also an expectation of a certain amount of collaborative discussion and evolution of a common strategy, rather than an expectation of instant compliance. And I think for the environments that they work in, by and large, that works. The difference in leadership styles in the 2 types of organizations works because of the very different environments and expectations and commitments in the 2 different environments. And there is no question that in the military there is an enormous amount at stake. There is an enormous amount both personally in terms of your own security and safety, as well as those of the organization you're leading, the troops you're leading. In a certain sense, there's much more at stake than in a corporate organization. Corporate organizations have their own pressures and their own stakes. There's often a lot of money at stake.
I was also post-retirement, I was also in the corporate world.
Indeed.
The one is to probably would like to bring out maximum profits. You are in a corporate world, you have a target set, and now these days it's everywhere is target. I was working in a hospital, so doctors are given target. The driver of the ambulance is given target, you have to bring so many people. So you have an objective, obviously profitable. I will come to General KALITA. General KALITA is from Saint School Guarpara. And I am proud to say, as has been brought out, the first senior most officer from our school. I did not get to meet him in the school, but when I was posted in Jammu, in I think 1986 or 87, he came as a young officer. He was posted in a Kumau, in 9 Kumau, and I was in the intelligence corps. And that time we could make out that he has the potential becoming a great leader, and today we are so happy that he is the army commander. And post-retirement, the government of Assam has also appointed him in a very important post, chairman of the 7th Finance Commission. Now, my question is, while we were in the army, we always keep, this discussion has been always there. Leaders are born or made. Now, you are from a small town, Rangia, from a humble background like us, and you are in Sainik school. So what do you actually feel? Leaders are born, or if someone has good potential, he can be developed to be a good leader?
There is no clear-cut solution or answer to that particular question. Is it working? Yeah. I don't think there is any perfect answer to that question, but before I come to that question, I would like to comment on what you had asked Sri NAIR about the differential leadership between the corporate world and the army. My perspective is slightly different. I think there is no difference as far as traits of leadership qualities are concerned. They remain the same, irrespective of what profession you choose. Basic traits and the qualities of leadership, man management, communication skills, they remain the same. There is no difference in that way, irrespective of what profession you are in. It's how you practice those leadership qualities that differs from organization to organization. In a strictly hierarchical organization like the armed forces, the way you practice those leadership qualities or the man management tactics would be different than probably a flatter organizations which exist in the corporate world. So that is where I feel is the difference as far as corporate world and the armed forces are concerned. Coming back to the question that you asked me, I think we have seen numerous examples of born leaders as well as made leaders. You know, born leaders were there in the early days, mythological times. Son of a king also becomes king and he becomes a leader. So, but the times have changed now, and with times I think the basic leadership is also, the concept of leadership is also changing. I would say that leadership, of course, is dependent on certain basic qualities which an individual has to possess. There is no deviation to that. There are certain basic requirements for any successful individual. I would not call it as a leader. For any successful individual, irrespective of the profession, there are certain basic qualities which are required.
So one needs to be kept off. That is all.
Okay. So I think there are certain basic qualities for a successful leader. Honesty, hard work, perseverance. These are basic qualities that has to be there. And thereafter,
Just use that.
and then there are certain qualities which have to be learned or picked up while in that particular profession, because every organization needs certain basic qualities or traits. Like in armed forces, your man management technique is a basic requirement. the higher you go in the ranks, because as an army commander, you command, I commanded more than 2 lakh people. So how do you keep 2 lakh people, happy in different places who are, so that's a basic requirement, whereas man management may not be as important as in a corporate world. So it varies, but I would say it's become a mix of both born leader and made leader. You can't have a cut and dry solution.
Thank you, sir. But I just want to add one point. Leadership in army, especially when you are fighting the enemy, when you have to lead troops to fight the enemy, or lead troops to fight militancy or terrorism, or motivating our people to stay at, let's say, minus 30 degree 10% Siachen glacier, probably calls for slight difference. Otherwise, as generals brought out, almost all parameters are same. It depends at time and place where you can demonstrate your leadership skill. And at time in army, you have to take decision at a fraction of a second. That those type of things are, I feel, slightly different. Now coming back to your book, here's in this book, and in your book you discuss Manekshaw, who was the architect of the 1971 Liberation War, and you have also discussed General Sagat Singh. Both were two great generals. As for the young boys and girls, you may not know, there was one General Sagat Singh, who was General Officer commanding of 4 corps, that is test force. He had some out of the box ideas, because of which we could go to Dhaka much before it was, our time and space speeded up. Now, what do you feel is the major difference in the leadership of Manekshaw and Ranjit?
Thank you, sir. Before I answer your question, can I add a tiny point to General Kalita's response? He spoke about the characteristics that it takes to command at different levels. And I think both of you might be familiar with this, but for the audience I will say that there was a great British general, later became a field marshal, William Slim, who was a predecessor of General Kalita as Eastern Army commander in India before independence and indeed during the Second World War. And he's written a book, and he's written several books. He was actually quite a prolific writer. And in one of his books, Defeat into Victory, about the turnaround actually not in that book, I think it's somewhere else, but he has a passage where he talks about, he says the 4 most rewarding commands in an army career are command of a company, a battalion, a brigade and a division. And he sets out some key points for command of each of those formations. And in command of a company, he says you have to know every officer. You have to know every officer, and you need to know most of the men, at least by sight, if not by name. You command a battalion, he moderates that slightly. You still have to know all your officers. All your men must know you by name and by sight. There must never be a risk of them not recognizing you. And he goes on and he gives, it's about a page and a half of really pithy instructions on how best to lead and command. And I've actually used that text and handed it out to some of my teams when I was leading corporate teams, and they found it very useful. If you're leading a team of 200, these are very good ideas. If you're leading a team of close to 1,000, these are very good ideas. So I would say, as the general says, there is actually more in common than I may have suggested for my first answer. But having said that, coming to Brigadier BARTHAKUR's question about Manekshaw and Sagat Singh. I think should I give a little background? General, as he was then, he was still the General Manekshaw at the time of the Second World War. He was the army chief, right? And Lieutenant General Sagat Singh was actually 2 levels below. He was the GOC of a corps, right? Which was one of three broad core-sized formations that were in position to go into Bangladesh from different directions when the 1971 war started. Now, General Manekshaw managed the political pressures incredibly well. When the Pakistan Army crackdown in Bangladesh started, which was in late March 1971, March 25th, 1971, there was an immediate response in the form of information about the atrocities being committed in what was then East Pakistan was flowing out. Refugees had started crossing the border into India in incredible numbers, in numbers far higher than any of the current refugee crises around the world. The number of refugees that came into India during the lead up to the 71 war was the highest of any of these refugee crises since the Second World War. Higher than any of the other so-called, the Syrian crisis, higher than any of those other crises since then. So there was a lot of pressure on the army. There was a lot of pressure on Manekshaw to come up with a quick solution. And there are cabinet meetings of which the minutes are now public. The minutes of those cabinet meetings are public domain. Where there was a lot of pressure on General Manekshaw as chairman of the Chief of Staff's committee to come up with, do something immediately. Now, there is a famous cabinet meeting at which, after the meeting was over, and General Manekshaw had given his views on the impracticability of doing anything immediately and the need for time. Everyone else left the room, and Mrs. Indira Gandhi, the Prime Minister, is said to have asked General Manekshaw to stay behind. And then what transpired between them, we only have General Manekshaw's version. And General Manekshaw's version is a very entertaining version. But General Manekshaw was such a marvelous raconteur that, with full respect to him, I would say we have to take his version of the story with a little bit of salt. But anyway, the point is that he was able to negotiate with Mrs. Gandhi to make her understand that the Indian Army needed time. The Indian Army was scattered around the border in small formations. They needed to consolidate. We needed to set up. There was all kinds of preparation that was needed, and the monsoons were going to break in the region in a couple of months, and that would have made East Pakistan an attacker's nightmare. So he was able to negotiate the extension of time, and in collaboration with General Rustamji, in collaboration with Mr. Rustamji, who was the Director General of the BSF at that time, he was able to negotiate some kind of support that we could provide, which would keep a lid on things to a certain degree. And I think at that level, General Manekshaw was operating at a I would say at a kind of almost at a political level. General Sagat Singh was a battlefield commander. General Sagat Singh saw battlefield opportunities. Famously, he asked for maps for certain sectors which he had not yet been authorized to go into. But he asked for those maps from the government printer's office months before the war started. So he was clearly thinking about it months before the war started. So I would say the difference between the two, sorry, not to take too long, General Manekshaw was managing political pressures. General Sagat Singh was a battlefield commander of incredible capability and also a man of immense personal courage. He went into fire zones, and was actually creased by a bullet on his forehead. Didn't turn a hair. He was described as being calm as a monk after that helicopter landed. He was bleeding from the top of his head, but he was calm as a monk. That's not easy. Anything you want to say on this?
There are different forms of leadership because they were pitched at a different level. So it will not be correct to compare the leadership between the two great generals, tacticians or strategists which the armed forces have seen. Probably if we compare both of them directing any operations at a similar level, then it would be worthwhile to compare. But of course, they were very strong personalities, and Sagat Singh, like you have said, was a battlefield general. He could exploit those fleeting opportunities. He could sense those opportunities, and thereafter he could evolve a plan that could be implemented to exploit those opportunities and gain victory. So that was the strength of General Sagat Singh, whether in 71 war or even in 1967 in Nathula Chola incident as well. It was basically his brilliance which gave a bloody nose to the Chinese immediately after 1962 debacle. So Field Marshal Manekshaw is of course at a different level, because at chief's level, when he is carrying out campaign planning and trying to liberate a country, a complete country, so then the qualities that are required are completely different. So I think leave it.
So if I can just add a small point in defense of myself. General Kalita mentioned Nathula 1967. The battalion commander at Nathula, then Lieutenant Colonel Rai Singh, was a close family friend. Mrs. Rai Singh was my Hindi teacher. So I do have some connections to the army.
So now what I was trying to bring out the different style of leadership, not really comparing. Now, few days back, few days before coming here, I talked to General Sagat Singh's son, Colonel Ranjit Singh. He happens to be from my unit, 6 MAC. I said, please let me know something greatness about your father. Firstly, he said, whenever when General Sagat Singh was also a corps commander, whenever he used to go to the office, Colonel Ranjit Singh and his brother used to stand up in attention, and General Sagat Singh used to smile and go. But what he said was, General Sagat Singh was, he interacted with everyone, from junior officer to senior officer. Then he could get maximum loyalty and dedication. But he was quite a hard task master. And most important, he said, he would accept major mistakes of junior officers, even those are very, very major mistakes. He took responsibility. Those are, I think, great quality of General Sagat Singh. Now, coming back to next question, whenever we talk of leadership, leadership basically is leading a group, the leader himself, the group and the situation. So your leadership may differ as per the situation it comes to. Like if you are going for a CI operation, counterinsurgency operation, as a junior leader, you are fighting against, you are trying to deal with your own people. But when you are going to war, you are fighting the enemy. Now, having served in militancy, mostly in JNK, even in Assam, can you cite one or two examples where you feel that your leadership as a young officer or senior officer faced it at that critical time?
There are numerous anecdotes. If I start narrating all these anecdotes, I think we will take up most of the time.
One or two?
Yeah. You see, leadership, you don't practice leadership as if, you are trying to see for yourself whether that quality is practically implementable or not. It is once you develop those qualities, those things come on your own. So, there are a lot of things. Firstly, what Brigadier BARTHAKUR had mentioned, that when you go for conducting any operation, then the type of leadership required probably would be slightly different than when you are carrying out some planning of operations. Because that time, apart from your other qualities, what is more important is your bravery, valor, and your team spirit or the camaraderie that you develop, that you evolve. I'll just two things I would like to narrate. One was when I was a battalion commander in Kashmir Valley. I was commanding a Rashtriya Rifle Battalion in 2002 to 2005. And that time the militancy in Kashmir was at its peak. And I was located in a place called Manasbar, which is about 30 kilometers from Srinagar, next to a very beautiful lake, Manasbar Lake. So there we used to have very frequent operations. So one of the things what I want to highlight is the camaraderie which exists, which is a basic requirement when you go for carrying out operations. You know, one night at about 3 o'clock, one of my company commander, post commander, he gave me a call that they have got information about 2 militants. They were hiding in one of the graziers hut, which is made of stone, basically. And they are quite well dispersed. And so they had surrounded that, they did the immediate surrounding of the hut. So thereafter, by morning, all of us, the CO has to be there, of course, to lead the operation. So I, along with my party of about 12 people, we also landed up, and we had surrounded that particular hut where the Pakistani infiltrator militants were holed up. And the game had started. Now was to close in with those 2 people and try and eliminate them. So, but the moment we used to come out from cover, they used to open fire. So me and my team was taking shelter behind another hut, which was about 200 meters from that hut. And in army, when we operate, we have a system called buddy system. You know, we operate in pairs. Like, you cover my back, I cover your back. That's the system, to put it very, very in layman's language. So I had a buddy who was a Kashmiri Muslim from that particular area only, because he could interpret, for me. So that's how I used to take him as a buddy. And we had been operating together, and we had developed some sort of, confidence in each other, faith in each other's, honesty, integrity, and the capability. So since I was the CO and this whole game was going on for almost 2-3 hours, we were advancing very, very slowly. I was trying to see for myself that how best we can, finish the operations as early as possible without suffering any casualty. So in my exuberance to do that, I came out from this FT and tried to locate a way through which we can, go closer. So the moment I came out, this buddy of mine pounced on me and pulled me down. And the moment both of us came down, there was a heavy volume of fire which came from those militants to exactly the spot where I was there. Look at that individual, a Kashmiri Muslim army man, his motivation, his spirit of camaraderie, his loyalty, where without fearing for his life, he tried to save me, or he saved me as well as he saved himself. That doesn't come all of a sudden. It comes with years of operating together, having confidence in each other, having faith in each other. So that is one of the aspects of leadership which I want to
You want to talk about Air Force fight. You have written quite a bit on Air Force in 1971 war. You have talked about dog fight. You want to talk anything about the leadership of an Air Force officer which we have mentioned in the book?
To that point, to Brigadier BARTHAKUR's point, I think an equivalent leadership story would be that of then Wing Commander Cecil Parker, who again is a family friend. Full disclosure, he's a family friend. He'd been in command of a hunter squadron for 2 years before the war started. So he was one of the most experienced squadron commanders on the Western Front at that time. And he was famous for this. That squadron was tasked for what is called counter-air, that is to attack enemy airfields. And he was famous for having procured photographs and maps of all the designated Pakistani airfields that his unit was likely to attack, and making his unit study them, square inch by square inch on the maps, to understand the approaches, to understand the likely positioning of anti-aircraft defenses and so on. And he had a very capable flight commander, second in command of the squadron, and he had said, I'm leaving all mission tasking to you. You decide who flies on which mission, with one exception. Day 1, mission 1, I will fly. And he did that. Day 1, mission 1 was to Peshawar. Peshawar was the deepest target in West Pakistan at that time. It was so deep, in fact, that the Pakistanis used to withdraw all their strategic aircraft at that time was the B-57, which is the American version of the Canberra, which we also used to operate. And they used to move their Canberras to Peshawar every night because they thought it was safe from it was safe from attack. It was out of range of most Indian aircraft. Wing Commander Parker's squadron had just received a new version of the Hunter, which had the ability to carry 4 very large auxiliary fuel tanks. So they actually were able to reach Peshawar with those 4 auxiliary fuel tanks, but they could only carry guns. They couldn't carry bombs or rockets because of the weight of the fuel. But he took on that first day's first mission. It was reasonably successful, although with only the cannons, there's not much damage that they could do to airfield installations. But they were successful in emptying their ammunition on the enemy airfield, delivering a message essentially. And they came back, although they were chased by 3 sabres. He and his wingman were chased by 3 sabres. They made it back safely. Both had about 30 or 40 bullet holes in their aircraft when they came back. Both their aircraft flamed out as they were landing. So it was actually a story out of almost out of a film. Then immediately afterwards, he carried out a second sortie the same day. Came back from that after dark, and when he came back, he discovered that the squadron barber was waiting for him because he had booked the squadron barber 2 days before or something like that to come to his house. The squadron barber was waiting for him. So he sat in the lawn of his house and had the barber cut his hair. And the squadron was so impressed by his commitment to turn out in the middle of a war that in their operations record book they wrote that he was reputed to have given an order to everyone that they must be as well turned out in crossing the border as if they're on parade. So there was he was regarded as an exemplary leader in his time, and there were these little things he did on those lines. Apart from putting himself in physical danger, in encouraging officer-like qualities, soldierly leadership. I will do the first sortie. I will lead the first sortie. Which I think they go to the same point. They're not as viscerally physical as the anecdote that General Kalita described, but the leadership qualities that he was demonstrating, I think, are very, very similar.
Thank you, Nair. I was telling the beginning about the army officer or leadership in the armed forces, where you have to really take decisions at sometimes at a very quick time. I also want to give one of my own experience. I was commanding an intelligence unit, and friends will know, my duty is to pass information and the infantry unit go for operation. And many operations we had gone together. Where I was posted in a particular place, and that time there was no mobile communication. And we had connect something called radio relay signal communication, which was also off at night. So one day one source came, one person came, informer came, he told that in a particular place there is a militant leader. I had no way of telling the infantry unit, it was night. Maybe immediately I got excited and we decided to go. So we had a wife, that time we had Maruti van given by the government, Assam government. So I with 6, 7 of mine, maximum I had those many people only, info people who went to that particular house taken by the source. That particular house, as we entered, Unfortunately, one of the AK-47 of one of my NCO, the bullets went off. And the person was opening the door and it hit all over. And it was and immediately we realized that he was not a militant. We were given wrong information. So there was a time what I should do. So my one or two JCO and all told me, you leave because no one has seen us. You come back. Because if you report, there will be big thing, there will be problem. You can come back, no one has seen. So that time I took a decision. No, the person is injured. You have to, we'll take him, whatever happened. So we brought him, we tied him in a ground sheet, bed sheet and brought him to the hospital, army hospital. In the morning, 4 or 5 o'clock, when our communication started, I rang up the current GS. So initially he was annoyed because firstly it was not my duty to go for an operation. I was supposed to give information and go and plan and go. But he asked to General Officer Commandant. General Officer Commandant was very happy that you did not leave that person there. He would have died if you brought him back, and he took the responsibility to help me, protect me. What I am trying to say, so their time comes, you have to just decide क्या करना है, क्या नहीं करना है. That is all. So that type of decision you have to really take at times. And coming back to KALITA sir. Now, for your civilian friends, if you see the history of Indian armed forces, especially in 62, 65, 71 war, it's always the young officer delivers. The number of casualties, officers dying, fighting for the country of young officers, that if you compare, it's quite a large number. If you compare the statistic with any other army, let's say Pakistan Army, US Army, our numbers are quite a lot. They leap from the front and they get killed because of the task involved. So what is that make, I want to know from the KALITA, what is that make the young officers every time taking the challenge, going and sacrificing their life?
I think that is ingrained in right from the time you take the last step in Indian Military Academy. When you pass out, all the officers who are here, they would remember that when you pass out and you go into the childhood hall, and for the students here, there is that's the motto of Indian Military Academy, which is ingrained into us, and which was given out by Sir Philip Chetwood. He is the first commandant of Indian Military Academy when it was established in 1932. So it says that the safety, honor, welfare of your country comes first, always and every time. The safety, honor, welfare and welfare of your man you command comes next. Your own safety, honor and welfare comes last, always and every time. So right from the day one, you become a commissioned officer. That is ingrained into you. While you are in training in the academies as well. One of the basic concepts, what I would say, for easier to understand, what we say is the leaders eat last. So it's that concept which is followed. We eat last, but lead be the first one while going for an operation. So that thing is ingrained in the basic ethos of the Indian Army. And it is, at the younger level, it's more of participative type of style of leadership which is being practiced, because it's not directional style of leadership. That doesn't work as far as the tactical level is concerned, whether at the company level or at the battalion level. The directive style of functioning doesn't work. It's your participative style of leadership which is going to work, and which will produce results, because the decision you make, there's a very thin line between life and death, because the decisions that are made at that level may keep you alive or you may lose your life. So before you ask your man to be ready to lay down your life, you yourself have to be ready to do that. So that comes with the basic teaching and basic ethos. So that's why we see numerous examples of the army. Army means armed forces, whether it's army, navy, or air force. Young officers leading personally. In Kargil war, we all know, most of us, if you see that movie which was made on Kargil war, LOC, so you see numerous stories. Vikram Batra, who can forget, ye dil mange more, what he said. You know, thereafter, after capturing one pig, he volunteered for another one where he laid down his life and made the supreme sacrifice. So I think it is to do with the basic thing which is ingrained when you pass out from the Indian Military Academy. And that is taught again and again while in service.
Nair, my next question to you. We have seen leaders from Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, and like you have brought Ilmasis Slim, and so many others. Now, there is a lot of change in the battlefield concept. There is a lot of development in the technological field. Now, drones are there. You may not go. By staying here, you can fire the enemy. Similarly, cyber warfare is coming. So, do you feel with the development of technology, the leadership principle or leadership concept has gone change, or what is it?
So I do think it is changing, but that is not new. I think it has been changing for many years. I mean, going back 100, 150 years, before there were muskets, before there were distance weapons, leadership involved skill in sword fighting, and or if you look at all the stories in the Mahabharata, they were all contact weapons. The heroes of the Mahabharata were all experts in some contact weapon or other. Bhima was an expert with the gada. Arjun used the bow, but I think the demands on leadership, the expectations of leadership changed when distance weapons started becoming common even at infantry level. And I think there will be some changes. But I do think that there is a certain ethos and there is a certain commitment to the welfare of the country and the welfare of your subordinates before your own welfare. I do think that has stood us in good stead for more than 100, for getting on for 100 years now. And I think something like that will continue to stand us in good stead, even when possibly the physical threat in a large part of the operations is less than it is today. So I think some of those principles will still hold, but there will be some changes in the demands of leadership. And we can, I'm happy to talk a little more about that, but I think it's very difficult to predict. But whatever it is, there will be changes. So I think that's it.
You have rightly said the principles remain the same, technique may be a little different. In my case, I just want to add, from my department, where like Intelligence Bureau, RNW, and once upon a time, now also we do, we have to send people across to enemy country to get information. I was also operating in Jammu border in 16, 17. But now what has happened with the cyber development, most of the information you can get by hacking. Hacking, it is done, ethical hacking or unethical hacking. So what I am telling, there too a little bit of, there are change, but basic principle concept remain the same. Now I want to talk to them, KALITA. Motivation is very important. Motivation in armed forces is important. Now, motivation is required everywhere, even for a student to study and do well in exam. Motivation to get a job, you have to work hard and get motivated. Now, my point is, here you are retired now, the percentage of people from Assam or Northeast to the armed forces is quite less. Is there lack of motivation or what is the problem? As now you are the senior most officer, people of Assam will be looking up to you to guide this thing. What do you feel, how can you motivate, or what is your, do you have some plan or thinking about it to get maximum people from the northeast, or particularly from Assam, to the armed forces, whether as an Agniveer or as an officer.
That there is a problem in this. In fact, a couple of months back, I think you had also written an article, and I had also written an article in Nyonya Barta in Asmis about the lack of subscription by the youth of Assam in the armed forces. It's particularly in the rank of officers. And the statistics also prove that our subscription in the rank of officers is much lower than even Manipur. Manipur is a much smaller state, but their percentage of people as in the rank of officers in the armed forces is much higher than of Assam. While I was posted in Kolkata, so that time I used to visit a lot of places in Assam and interact with various school and college students. One of the things which I found was there was absolute lack of awareness about the opportunities that are offered by a career in the armed forces as an officer. One is lack of awareness, and the second is certain myths, certain incorrect information which are there in the minds of the people. And there is one more reason to it. I would say that's a third reason, because since 80s, Assam had seen insurgency movement, wherein starting from 1990, when Operation Bajrang started, armed forces were employed to control the insurgency movement in Assam. Now, the armed forces are not trained to operate against their own citizens. So, while carrying out these counter-insurgency operations in Assam, it generally inconveniences the common people, particularly the school children and the college children. The students sitting here may not have experienced it, but the elder lot would agree with me, because when the operations are on against the militants, then the army comes to your house, carries out search at night. It wakes you up, carries out search at night. When you are going in a vehicle, it stops that vehicle, carries out search. It tells you to get down from that vehicle and carries out search in that vehicle. And number of times it happens because of some wrong information, like Brigadier BARTHAKUR had mentioned. Even innocent people are either killed or harmed. So it creates, because of long employment of armed forces against the militants in Assam, there is a wrong impression about the armed forces in the minds of the people. Now I felt that that can be dispelled only by taking armed forces closer to the people. And that can be done by the armed forces only. So during my tenure in Kolkata, we took a lot of measures of organizing Know Your Army Mela in various towns and villages. It's still being organized, so that you take the army, because it's difficult for the people to come on to the army cantonment, so you take army to the people. So you organize those melas and you tell people what the army is doing and why it is a people's army, your army. It's not somebody else's army. It's not a colonial army like it used to be in the British days. So I think that these are the 3-4 basic reasons why I find there is, of course, lack of participation from the youth of Assam. And fourth, of course, it's a hard fact, but it's truth. I think majority of us would prefer a softer option of a government job in my village or in my town than to face the challenges of the armed forces. There are challenges, but the opportunities that is offered by a career in armed forces is far better than staying in your village and doing a teacher's job. Let me tell you, very, very honestly and very frankly.
So may I add a point? So I absolutely did not want to add a point when General KALITA and Brigadier BARTHAKUR were talking about occasions when they themselves were in the line of fire. It would be presumptuous of me to add anything there. But on this point, I just shared an experience. Back in the late 80s, I went to the UK as I was in my 20s, my early 20s at that time. And that was a period when the British Army had been quite active in Northern Ireland, which, as you all know, is probably known, is a part of the United Kingdom. It's not part of the Republic of Ireland. It's part of, Ulster, actually. Belfast is the town. Ulster. So the British Army had been active in Northern Ireland, and they had similar issues. They weren't able to hire locals, local Irish, and it was important for them to hire local Irish. So they embarked on a special campaign in Northern Ireland. And I happened to see some of the public relations and advertising that they undertook. There was definitely an element of know your army better. But I also observed that for whatever it's worth, in that environment, nothing about that campaign said anything about 7th Pay Commission or 8th Pay Commission or anything like that. Their publicity was built around this is not for everyone, but it is special. If you make it into the army, you are special. And the visuals that they used to illustrate it were sometimes they showed army soldiers in very difficult situations. There was one photograph which looked as though it had been taken in the Falklands. It showed 3 British soldiers standing up to receive. It showed about a dozen men charging them, probably meant to be Argentinians, a dozen men charging them, 3 British soldiers standing up to receive the charge. So there was nothing about it that looked like it was like they were selling, an improved salary package or anything like that. Another of the visuals showed a pilot being removed from a crashed aircraft. There were clear burns on one of his shoulders, but he was being removed, and there was a sense that there were procedures in place to evacuate safely and so on. The message was, this is special. This is not for everyone. This is special. If you think you're man enough for the job, come and talk to us. It had nothing whatsoever to do with pay. So for whatever it's worth, I will just leave that for you.
So the Indian Army's tagline is, do you have it in you? So if you have it in you, then you come and join.
You talked about very less percentage of officers from northeast or from Assam into the armed forces. When we were in the Sainik school, I am from Sainik school, sir. Then KALITA is also from Sainik school. Numbers were quite a lot. Every time 10, 12 boys used to join NDA. Now number is not even 2 or 3 every 6 months. But what I want to tell young boys and girls, that you need not join Sainik school to you need not study in Sainik school to join NDA. So many boys, so many girls from school, normal schools have joined armed forces. And now National Defence Academy is open to girls. Every 6 months, 20 girls are taken. But till now, I don't think any girl from Assam has joined or would try to join the NDA. So I would request you should try. Even for Agniveer, that is the lower rank, it's a very good opening you have got. I have the Agniveer girls, every year 100 girls are taken into one CMP, Corps of Military Police. I have talked to many of them, they graduate, some of them are masters, they have joined. So my request is to all of you, whenever such advertisement come, do apply. Even if you don't get, you will have an experience. In 1962, we had the Indo-China War. Chinese came up to foothills of Assam. You know, after 1962, the first batch in 1963, more than 20 doctors from Assam Medical College were so motivated they joined the armed forces. That may not be known to many, but that is what happens. Now, before we open up for discussion or question and answer, we have been talking about leaders, and basically most of civil boys and girls think a leader has to be tall, handsome. That is, yes, that is not the most important quality. Apart from your strength, physical and mental strength, you have to have character, integrity. Those are very, very important things. And that is why, if you see in the UPSC exam, anyone who appears, there is a paper on ethics. In Assam Public Service Commission since last 3 years, we have introduced the paper on ethics. So even if you are very good, but if you lack character, if you lack integrity, you are of no use. So I would like to, before I close on this note, I want to request General KALITA to say something.
I think some reference was made to it about changing nature of warfare. You know, the nature of warfare has been constantly changing with the improvement in technology. So now the future leadership, particularly in the armed forces, and I'm sure it is true even for other professions as well, are going to be more and more challenging because the whole environment is changing. Technology has facilitated a lot of things. It has also complicated a lot of issues, like the weaponization of pagers, which was done by the Israelis to target the Hamas leadership. So it put a fear into the minds of everybody. So with this, I think there are a lot of changes which has to take place when you, in our approach to leadership and motivation. Apart from the normal traits of leadership qualities, certain other soft skills, I think, I call them soft skills. And I have been advocating development of these soft skills in the youth, irrespective of the profession. But then it's very, very important for young and budding leaders. Now, the first of the soft skill is problem-solving ability. I think it is a basic requirement of any leader or any individual, I would say. And it's required for your professional life as well as personal life. You have to be able to discern the important thing and overlook certain things which are not so important to be able to solve the problem in a positive manner. So first I would say is the problem solving ability. Second soft skill I would say is decision making. There is a tendency of procrastination. You know, people want to pen things. Like for the students present here, amar Ohomiyat hokole koi, pisot korim de, bad de, hanna, kiba hobo de, bad de, pisot korim. Please don't do that. Decision making, timely decision making is extremely important. The more there is a tendency of delaying decisions. Easiest thing to delay decision is to ask for more details. Your subordinate comes to you with seeking some decision, you send him back, you tell him that you get this detail, you get that detail. That's the easiest thing to delay a decision. So this is the second skill which you need to have, which I feel is extremely important and it's lacking now, I would say, very, very bluntly. The third thing is risk-taking ability. You have to have the ability to take risk. It's extremely important because without risk, you'll never get successful. To be successful in life, whether in personal life or professional life, you have to take risk. You select your spouse, a girl, as your wife, you are taking huge risk. So it's applicable in personal life as well. So risk-taking ability is extremely important as the third soft skill, I would say. And the last and the fourth soft skill, which is extremely important, is good communication skill. You have to be a good communicator. Unless you are a good communicator, you cannot project your ideas to the attendees or the audience to whom you are talking to, whether in your own organization, unless you are able to communicate your ideas to your subordinates. How do you expect them to be implemented on ground? So I think the new form of leadership needs development of these soft skills, which will make you more successful. And I'm sure the young boys and girls who are present here would be able to follow this and be successful in life. Thank you.
Sir, may I just add that the 4 soft skills that General Kalita just mentioned are all very highly valued in corporate leadership. All 4 of them are extremely high. Risk may mean something slightly different, but all 4 of those soft skills are very highly valued, and they're inculcated. There are formal attempts made to inculcate them among corporate leaders. May I also add, sir, I've been wanting to say that for some time, that the characteristic you displayed of taking responsibility for a mistake and doing what you could to rectify it is the Indian Army at its best.
Thank you, sir. I think we had a long discussion. Now it is open to the House. I request maximum people to
Absolutely.
ask questions, and you will not get General Kalita again and again. He has come. So please, anything you have in your mind, please ask him. Mr. Nair is there. Kindly go ahead.
Jain sir. So it's a small world. It's been around.
Your introduction.
Myself, Manas Pratim Sekar. I'm an army brat myself.
Okay.
So my father is still serving. So I recognize all of his officers from Dinjan. I took him all the way from Dinjan to meet Kalita sir.
Yeah, very nice of you.
So it's been around 9 to 10 years, almost a decade. When I shook hands with you, I was the head boy of APS Dinjan then. So, and I would like to thank you, General Kalita and Brigadier RANJIT sir, for your service. And I would like everyone to please give a big round of applause to all the generals and all the serving officers here. So I was hoping to hear more about General Kalita and his accomplishment, but I will do it myself for everyone. So Lieutenant General RANA PRATAP KALITA, he is Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Uttam Yudh Seva Medal, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Sena Medal, Vishisht Seva Medal. So he brings himself with an immense operational experience such as Operation Pavan, Sri Lanka, Operation Parakram and Rakshak J&K, Operation Rhino and Operation Bajrang Assam. So it leads to my next question, sir. As many of my civilian friends ask me, what does the army does in peacetime? As an army, I know myself what they do. As they say, फौज शांति काल में युद्ध की तैयारी करते हैं. So I am very sure that General Kalita will have a much more brighter answer to that. What are the key principles of leadership in wartime, and how do they differ from peacetime leadership? So one more point. As we were talking about more of the officers joining in the Indian Army from Assam, I would like to mention one of our war hero of the Kargil war itself, Captain Jintu Gogoi. He's a Veer Chakra. So I would like to give a big round of applause for him. So please, over to you, sir.
Since you mentioned about late Captain Jintu Gogoi, firstly, I met him when he was a student in Officers Training Academy. I was posted as an instructor at that point of time, and that was just before he went for Kargil operations. So it's very difficult to say that whether there is any different qualities of leadership in times of war and in peace. I know there are people who say that there is a difference, but I don't agree. Like I had mentioned initially also, that there is no difference in forms of leadership between the armed forces and the corporate world. It's how you practice that is different. That is where the difference comes in. You know, even in war and peace also it is the same. Basic qualities don't change. Your honesty, your integrity, your loyalty, your perseverance, the never say die attitude, don't give up. All these things count in peace as well as in war. There is no difference. But in war, the time component to take a decision is very less.
Yes.
So that comes with, you know, enormous amount of experience. You know, how to reduce the time to take a decision. It comes with enormous, you know, experience. And that experience is gained during this time. That comes to the question which you asked first, but I answered later. Because that what you do in this time is to gain experience. You train yourself and you gain experience so that you are ready for the war. Because war is not going to give time. And there is no space for losers as far as war is concerned. Which you can practice in peacetime. That's the difference.
Can I?
Yeah, please.
Sir. Can I sit down?
Yeah.
No, actually, this is just to tell the boys, the ladies and gentlemen here that Brigadier RANJIT, BARTHAKUR and I, we had worked together. I'm a former civil servant, sir, and Brigadier RANJIT BARTHAKUR is, as you know, he's a brigadier, retired. We worked together under some very difficult circumstances, and I owe it to the people here that there were times, and it still continues with me right now, I have been indecisive. Even there, while having the civil administration works going on, there were times when I couldn't decide. And that is the time when RANJIT, we call each other by our first names, he was the one who was always, clinically decisive. There was no grey area, it was neither. Then one day I told him, RANJIT, okay, big deal. We civil servants, we deal with justice. What is right, what is wrong. And then he says, Dhruva, we deal with life and death. Salute to you. Oh yes, Mr. Tete wants to ask.
Please sit.
No, I can stand.
Please sit down.
First of all, I would like to thank you a lot because you have made speeches which I find very human, because many people think that army is for war.
Yeah.
That is the mentality of many people in the world. But now I see that army is there to protect the population, against any aggressor. That is the role of the army. I am from Togo, which was colonized by France, and after the independence, the army took the power. 60 years after, now it is the son of the general who has become the president, so that there is no democracy. I have heard that some of you have been to Africa, you have trained some African soldiers. So how do you consider what is happening there? Instead of protecting the population, they want to be the new colonizers of their own people. That is my first question. My second question is, I am an African, but My country is Togo, and I have another country which is Greenland. Now there is somebody who says he will buy Greenland, and if he doesn't succeed to buy Greenland, he will invade Greenland. You here, who are military specialists, which advice can you give me to transmit to my Greenland friends? Thank you very much.
Tete Michel, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know him, Tete Michel is he's a remarkably accomplished gentleman who, as a teenager, he started on a surface journey from Togo in West Africa to Greenland. He was interested in going to Greenland because he wanted to go somewhere where there are no snakes. At least that's how he explains
my
it to
point
us.
is, if Trump takes over Greenland, he'll not go.
That is a whole different discussion. But just to
I must say that when I was traveling, I came to Senegal. I had to look for work. I had to look for work to get money and go further. When I came to Senegal, I got a job at the Indian Embassy. Yes, I am very grateful because that money, I worked there as a typist and office boy, etc. And for 3 months, and the money I earned allowed me to travel from Senegal to France. So all India, I am grateful. And when I was at the embassy, I knew how Mahatma Gandhi, how Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru inspired our politicians in Africa, how Nelson Mandela was inspired by the peaceful resistance of Mahatma Gandhi. So I hope that you will help me to that all of us we save Greenland, because the Greenlandic people are very heroic people. They live in very hard conditions. Then we must respect their culture. They are not there to be bought, but they are there to be respected. Thank you.
If your question is still there, I'll just make the point to Tete Michel that yes, the Indian Army sends instructors sometimes to African countries, but as far as I'm aware, and I've interacted with some of them in my time in Africa, as far as I'm aware, they go only to countries that can be described as reasonably democratic, such as Zambia, for instance. There is an Indian military advisory team in Zambia. I have interacted with them. They don't teach anything to do with crowd control or anything remotely like that. They teach staff techniques, or they teach. They work at the command and staff colleges on command techniques, on some of the techniques that General Kalita and Brigadier BARTHAKUR have been describing. I am not aware that the Indian Army has at any time assisted an African armed force that is engaged in repression of its own citizens. I do not know of any.
Probably this newer syllabus, you have to include this one as well. How to not become an oppressor to their own people. Maybe it should be there in their syllabus, I think.
I think that in many ways, man, I would say, and I shouldn't be speaking with two army officers here, I would say it's pretty much ingrained in the army. I don't think it comes naturally.
By looking at the condition of their country, I suppose a new syllabus should include this concept as well.
For them, yeah. No, I think there are huge structural inheritances that they have, that many of the French colonial territories inherited much less than India did. I mean, look, colonialism was terrible for India too, but we inherited some structures from the British which have stood us in good stead after independence. I think France, Portugal, Spain did not do as much to put those structures in place in their colonies. We're getting a long way away from the topic of the discussion.
We are just running short of time. I have just 2 points. Firstly, what Dibrugarh could get up. Actually, what he told a lot about me. We had a very, very difficult time in Assam Public Service Commission. I was member, then I became chairman, he was member. There's a huge corruption case, there was a lot of pressure on us, a lot of people were arrested, I think 20-25 of people. So it was about 3-4 months were extremely difficult. We didn't get support, political problems were there. But we got out of it because of the teamwork which I learned in the army, that we must work as a team. We, me and many others work, and the system has been very, very clear now. I request you would be, all those who are aspiring to join some government, any post, please apply. Only the best and honest people who really get qualified will get selected, not like that time would happen in 2010 or 12. Now coming back to your point, I just want, before the Kalita says something, if you see the neighborhood of India, their problem, Pakistan army is controlling some solid influence. Nepal, we had problems, the army and the district. Bangladesh, we have seen, but we have in India, we have been trained, brought up in such a manner that colonial mindset is not there. So even if our people go to any other country, rest assured, nothing will happen. We will be the part of the country where we go, do our best to help out. That is what I wanted to tell.
Yeah.
Most of these countries who became independent from colonialism, there we find where we have the militaries ruling, even including in our neighborhood as well as in Africa. It happens because the government in power politicize the army or the armed forces. And once a tiger tastes human blood, it's difficult for that tiger to then live off the animals, then it wants human to eat on human prey only. So if you politicize the army and get it into the governance, then you have lost the plot. So I think that is one of the main reasons. And that is what we see in our neighborhood as well, like Brigadier BARTHAKUR had mentioned. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, all these countries, they are from the same ethnicity, same stock. There may be difference in the religious practices or some of the social practices, but then ethnicity-wise, we are from the same stock. So, but even then, while India tried as a democracy, it's still thriving. We see military usurping power in both Bangladesh as well as in Pakistan. It's still doing. Pakistan is not a country of the people. They say it's a country of the Pak army. So when the moment you politicize the army, it gets into the wrong practices. I think that is something which you need to avoid. Because I am saying this because of I spent 2 years in Africa, 1 year in Sierra Leone as a peacekeeper, and the second year as a Sudan, just before the partition of Sudan into North and South Sudan. So there also found this army being politicized. And even now we have the fight going on in Sudan between the armed forces and the paramilitary forces. They are trying to control the state. And as far as your question about saving Greenland is concerned, I would recommend that I'll hand you over my CV to you. You can give it to the president of Greenland. You will not find a better qualified person as a military advisor.
Very interesting discussion, but we have just 5 to 7 minutes. I want the student to ask questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jain sir, I'm Akanksha Tamali, and I'm from English department from this university. And I got the chance to assist Brigadier BARTHAKUR sir for these days. And then my question to you, sir, Lieutenant General Kalita sir, that is there any strategy to increase the number of youth from Assam to join the armed forces? Because you talked about the awareness, lack of awareness.
Yeah, there are a lot of campaigns which are run by the armed forces. They have been going and giving talks in various colleges and universities. Apart from that, at least I had started when I was in service in two places, one in Dinjan and the second one was in Tamulpur, one in Upper Assam and one in Lower Assam. It was basically coaching 30 students for your entrance test in NDA. So those coaching camps were organized. I am also trying to, since I have retired and I am located at Guwahati, I have been working with the state government as well as certain private coaching centers who are interested in opening up the defense coaching part as part of their coaching centers. I am also trying to establish a state-owned institute which will coach, identify people from the various villages and towns, students, and then give them intensive coaching for a period of about 3 to 6 months to clear the entrance to the academy.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, sir. Sir, I'm Dipan Gogoi. I'm an NCC cadet and also a proud Fauji vet. So, sir, I've read the book India's Braveheart. Excuse me, sir. Sir, I've read the book India's Braveheart, and my question is to General Kalita. I've read an incident then Lieutenant General Satish Dua, at that time Corps Commander, and where an incident when the guys came back from the surgical strike, and you were there when Lieutenant General Satish Dua welcomed them, and you were at that time a brigadier. Can you please elaborate that incident, sir?
Which one? I couldn't get it.
Sir, 15 crore.
No, Satish Dua.
Yeah, Satish Dua, the Corps Commander.
Surgical strike.
After surgical strike, sir.
Surgical.
I have not spoken about this. When Jan Satish Dua was the Corps Commander, I was a brigadier at that point of time. And my appointment was, it is called as Brigadier General Service Operations. Basically, I was responsible for planning and conducting and monitoring all the operations in the Kashmir Valley, entire Kashmir region, that's the 15 Corps area. And when the Uri incident happened on 18th of October 2016, when militants had come and killed about 18 to 20 people of us. So that time I was there stationed at Srinagar, and Brigadier Satish Dua was General Satish Dua was the Corps Commander. And following that, we planned and carried out that surgical strike, which you have seen in that famous movie, Uri, though that is slightly dramatized version of what exactly had happened. I will not tell you what exactly had happened, but it had happened. And the results are there for everybody is aware. So that was in one of those movements. We used to travel very frequently along with General Satish Dua, because we are planning and coordinating and directing all the operations which was launched by the special commandos, para commandos. So in one of those movements that photograph had come out. So it was during that tenure.
Thank you, sir.
Question there.
My name is Anjar Hussain from the Department of Economics. My question is, with innovation, how do you think is leadership changing in Indian armed forces, and how do you view it to change over the next 15 or 20 years?
I think, like I mentioned earlier also, basic qualities won't change. But yes, the nature of warfare will change with the technology. So your method of prosecuting a war is going to change because of the changing nature of warfare. Earlier, what we were doing was something changed all over the years, from maneuver warfare earlier it was a trench warfare, static warfare. People used to be trenches, attack, and then it came, Second World War brought in maneuver warfare, with tanks and all going and carrying out operations. Then the Gulf War changed everything. It was the first technological where you used to fire from standoff distances. So leadership qualities are not going to change, but how you practice that, it's going to change. So that's the only thing. And thank you very much. You know, in one of the, sorry.
I am Pamananda Mhanta, who served here about 22 years ago as a retired teacher. I came basically to see both of you as the one, the highest general that comes from this place. Also, I begin with an apology to the army men, to all the army people.
So you could sit down and...
No, mind. A few years ago, all my life, I thought army people could be very dull. They didn't have any much intelligence, intellectual. Because it comes from all the, I think you mentioned also some of the reasons. Now, all that changed when I read this book. It was session 1987. It was written by Lieutenant General Kulkarni. Now, it has changed my attitude, and actually I openly apologize to General Kulkarni also in a written article while reviewing this book. Even I tried to apologize before you also. Now, this is just to tell you that I think most of the people, general people, do not have much interact with this army, and I used to think army men just like people working in post office or in railway, because they are the same big organizations of the Indian government. But I did not take into the consideration. And someone was asking about this, how army people spend their time living there when there is no war. That is what I also thought about it. What were they doing? They were playing noodles or... But when I read this book, I knew the word of that they were drilling all the time. Even the war may come a few years later, they do it right from the beginning. They are drilling. Not only the army soldiers, every state, a captain or a brigadier or whoever is going to be involved, they are going to be pinpoint exactly the operation. So this book, I really respect. I wrote to General Kulkarni that you have seen my attitude towards the army, and so I wrote one article in Prakash, which published in December issue, and I openly say that all Indian people should read such a book, because otherwise you do not know much about what the army people do, because this is a book filled with action, and then he tells it in detail how the whole army is operating. So I really thanks Lieutenant General Kulkarni, and I came just to see both of you today in reference to this. Thank you.
We're so grateful to you, and I come from a family of teachers, and I've got a lot of respect for the teaching community, because I think they are the ones who are the guiding factors to groom the younger generation.
Your father was the headmaster of Rangi High School.
Absolutely, sir. And so I'm so happy to tell you that after spending 40 years in army, I have rejoined as a teacher, and I am a visiting professor in Guwahati University. So I've got back into the profession of my family. So thank you very much for your kind words. I would like to request you to spread your word among the people about the army, what you spoke just now.
Sir, I just, because the literary meet also, I just thought you'd tell the youngest, the youngest crowd about the books that you think they ought to read on military history, warfare, whatever. If you have, just a small request for me, not for me, for them. Himalayan Blunder, things like that.
there is to be a book given to us called Duffer's Drift. Duffer's Drift. It's a very small book. I don't know whether you will find it or not. It's an excellent exposition on leadership qualities and what is required in a human being. And I would say it was like a Bible for me. It's a very small book. Otherwise, there are a lot of books, like he has also written 3 books on military history, on 1971 war, but somebody has to read, all the 3-4 books in continuation. If you read of only one operation, probably that will limit your knowledge to only one sector. So you need to read different books, starting from Second World War, World Wars as well, like I mentioned about the book by Slim, Defeat into Victory. Then the Himalayan Blunder, which covers 1962 operations. Then there are a lot of books on 71, there are a lot of books on Kargil operation, there are a lot of books on leadership which are written by the armed forces officers. The Making of General, which Himalaya Singh has written, how from Imphal he went on to become a general in the Indian Army. It's a beautiful exposition on his personal travails. So I am also planning to write a book. I hope you will also read. Always read this.
Sir, I have also written a book in Assamese, not about the bravery of armed forces. Like you, many people think that army people in peacetime does nothing. Even I am from a village, they said you do nothing, only war you have to fight. This is not. Secondly, people here think army people have no emotion, sentiment. That book I'll present you here, sir. I got a copy. I'll give it to you. That book is very, very small, real-time stories of our soldiers posted in different areas. There's nothing of war, but he's feeling an emotion. Sometimes our Jawan, suppose he doesn't get to see his baby for 3 months after his birth because he's posted in Siasin Grace. There are times he doesn't get letters for 2-3 months. So these people, you all do not really, because you have not interacted or you have not been exposed, you do not know. Everyone, whether he's in army or in police or in civil, are human being first. True. They have compassion, they have empathy. But yes, when you are fighting, when you got a weapon, you have to fight. That is your cause. So, very thankful to you that you have told us. And I'll give this book to you. Kindly go through it. Second point is, we are running short of time. Can you because General has to go, he's got another assignment in Guwahati today. I would like to close.